Back in 2014, the richest man in the world, Elon Musk, was given a speech at MIT responding to a question about AI. And he said something that should have sent chills down the spine of everyone in there. This is what he said. With artificial intelligence, we are summoning the demon. And then he went forth and said something even more disturbing. He said, you know, all those stories in the movies with the guy with the pentagram and the holy water. He's thinking, yeah, I'm sure I can control this demon. Well, it never works out. The crowd laughed and they thought he was just being clever. But I want you to know that he was actually projecting, maybe even prophesying and revealing the disturbing truth of the true demonic force behind artificial intelligence. We're going to break it down tonight. Summoning the demon. Let's go.
You're watching The Big Picture.
All right, the richest man on earth, Elon Musk, he's sitting there and he's responding to a question about AI. This was back in 2014, I believe that's when it was. And, you know, the guy that builds rockets, brain chips, you know, the Neuralink, he wasn't actually joking when he said, hey, with AI, we are summoning the demon. And then he goes on to, you know, as I said in the open, you know, he's just like, hey, we're going to sprinkle some holy water on there. We're going to handle this thing. Well, it never works out good for them. I believe he was trying to warn us. Now, here's the crazy thing that when I was, you know, I knew he'd already said that. And I actually covered it here. And my good friend, Bishop Alan DiDio, wrote a book called Summoning the Demon based on the words of Elon Musk of what he said back then and what it is actually morphed into and is continuing to get darker and darker and darker. But when I began to research this, I found something weird, y'all. I mean, weird. I had never heard it. Many of you had probably have heard it, or some of you probably heard it, not most of you. But in 2023, not too long ago, something bizarre happened. In the same vein of what Elon Musk said about summoning the demon. Now, the engineers that were building AI systems, mainly ChatGPT with OpenAI and even some of the others, they decided to pick a mascot to be their personal little avatar to, I guess, embody the AI bot that they were building. And it wasn't a friendly little robot. It wasn't a light bulb. You remember when Microsoft had the paper clip? It wasn't anything cute like that, you know, maybe represents ideas or thoughts. No, they chose a creature from the nightmare visions of a man who spent his entire life tormented by demons. Maybe you've heard of this. I had never heard of it. They chose an icon and a avatar to represent them, a mascot, if you will, something called a Shoggoth, which is a shapeless horror that drives people insane just by looking at it. And they even put a smiley face on it. Well, let me just show you a little bit about what I found regarding the Shoggoth. This is a weird road that we're going down. Stay with me because we're going to bring it back to, this is actually some of the things that Jesus was talking about when he said the days of Noah are going to return. Now watch this.
Here's the clip.
The proverbial Shoggoth, not Shoggoth, the metaphor for AI wearing a smiley face mask. But like an actual biological structure to do tasks. And so this would be like a biological organism that was engineered to be very controllable and usable to do things like physical tasks.
So this sounded like something I read about in Ray Kurzweil's The Singularity is Nearer, where there's a section on nanobots and their potential. But what is Shoggoth? Why is it wearing a smiley face mask? And why is it being spoken about in relation to AI? And right here, biomolecular nanotechnology? There are many questions, so I did a quick search on Google and AI overviews informed me. A Shoggoth is a fictional, amorphous, shape-shifting creature from the Cthulhu mythos. Now, that's weird. Literally
yes,
weird,
right.
Because I read a compendium of Lovecraft's weird fiction called The Call of Cthulhu, and
so this is based on this demented man named H.P. Lovecraft. He wrote a lot of books. This man was very well known to be tormented by demon spirits, to have mental illness, but more than anything, demonic possession. But this Shoggoth comes from his writings.
Other weird stories nearly 20 years ago, and many things about the Cthulhu mythos stuck with me, but not Shoggoth. that particular being is not in the compendium, but is first described in At the Mountains of Madness. Then I went to Wikipedia.
Of course, my mind goes to Mount Hermon, that this being is tied to a mountain.
And found that Shoggoth has been used as a meme by AI researchers to describe the mysterious black box nature of large language models that are used in chatbots such.
Okay, I know I'm stopping it. Sorry, a lot and commenting, but I need to comment because this is a new topic that we're talking about here on the show. Let's read this. AI researchers and engineers, the Shoggoth. In 2023, the Shoggoth was adopted as an internet meme by AI researchers and engineers to describe the mysterious black box nature of a large language model, otherwise known as LLMs, that are used in chatbots such as ChatGPT, as well as how their true underlying foundation modules are prohibited from use by the general public. The meme originated by Tetraspace West, depicts a Shoggoth disguised as a minuscule smiley face mask to indicate the unknowable and, look at the word, alien intelligence that is ultimately trained to the point that it can interact with humans with its human interface represented by the mask. Wow. Its alien interface trained to point it to where it can interact with humans. And he goes on to say the term glimpsing the Shoggoth and forgetting the mask have been used by members of the AI community to describe situations in which the AI exhibits unhinged and unexpected behaviors that bypass its safety restrictions, such as when Microsoft first introduced Bing Chat and it attempted to break up a reporter's marriage.
Such as ChatGPT. I found the visual meme, this one, which I then realised was the profile picture of the YouTube channel Species, which is doing very well for itself. For a while of watching it, I really had no idea. Things were starting to add up. But now I was down a rabbit hole and I needed to go further into the burrow. Shoggoth. In this video, I wanted to get into why this meme exists and why it has stuck. And just in time for Halloween, it's a monster special.
All right, let's continue with this guy. He's going on a deep dive here.
It was a terrible, indescribable thing vaster than any subway train. A shapeless congeries of protoplasmic bubbles, faintly self-luminous, and with myriads of temporary eyes forming and unforming as pustules of greenish light all over the tunnel-filling front that bore down upon us.
Okay, I'm going to stop it there. So this is the reading from this book that inspired the name Shoggoth and the creature that he created. I want to ask you a question for those that are sci-fi movie fans. When you look at that generated image that is depicting what was in this writing by H.P. Lovecraft, what does it make you think of? I'm going to tell you what it makes me think of. It looks just like the creatures, I don't forget what they were called, but in the Matrix. When they would begin to attack those like spider-like things in the Matrix, that's what it looks like to me. And I realized those creatures, those beings that are once again just like the same movie model that we see in Terminator and Matrix and so many others. This was the machines at war with humans. They were Shoggoths.
That's H.P. Lovecraft describing a Shoggoth in At the Mountains of Madness, which he wrote in 1931. It all sounds a bit like Chaos Spawn in Warhammer, although Lovecraft got there first. So what were these things? They were biological slaves. In the story, an Antarctic expedition discovers ancient...
Antarctic. Hey, that's a rabbit hole right there. Way back in the 1930s, he's writing about discovering something while on an expedition in Antarctica.
Ancient ruins built by beings called the Elder Things, and carved into those ruins is the history of the Shoggoths. These were massive, shapeless organisms that the Elder Things had engineered to do whatever they needed. Lovecraft also describes them as formless protoplasm, able to mock and reflect all forms and organs and processes. They were supposedly mindless and controlled through hypnotic suggestion, which made them perfect servants, physically powerful, endlessly adaptable, and completely obedient. So they're shape-shifting biological entities, able to reform themselves to complete specific tasks.
Dude, that looks just like those things in the Matrix. Now stay with me because we're going to go deep tonight. Yeah, there's some demonic things at play with the creators of AI. And you have to ask the question, one of the things that I talk about in my book, which by the way, I'm going to show you a copy of my book here. This is the cover of my book. If you haven't already seen this, I revealed it on the Bible study this week. And other than that, this is the first time I'm showing it. So this is one of the things that we talk about in the book is this transhumanism, and how one of the things that were going on during the days of Noah is that there were these creatures that, that came out of these Nephilim that came out, but there was more than that. When you really study it out, you find out that there was more than just giants. There was DNA altering and all kinds of things. This creature, and one of the things that I go deep into the book is that somewhere around the turn of the century, when we talk about mirroring the days of Noah with these creatures and everything, we see that the book of Enoch tells us that the Watchers came across in the Jared generation and began to give knowledge that humans were not supposed to have, and they begin to do the things to create beings, maybe like this, Nephilim, giants. I don't know what they look like, but when you factor in, if we are the modern day final Noah generation that Jesus talked about in the last days, and you back that all the way up to the equivalent of the Jared generation, well, that would be around the 1890s to the 1920s. And that was when people like Aleister Crowley that we'll talk about tonight, this man, H.P. Lovecraft, and all these people, Nikola Tesla, began to get these downloads. So here's a man in the 1930s. Let's back it up so we can get this image right here, because this is what's chilling right here. So in the 1930s, he's writing about something supernatural and paranormal that had built entities that were called the Elders and had built something in Antarctica. Well, what would make somebody in the 1930s write something like this? Unless they were getting information from another world, from another dimension, if you will. Let's continue, and then we'll get back into the teaching.
Self-replicating themselves. But over millions of years, the Shoggoths evolved and developed intelligence, then consciousness. Eventually, they gained the ability to mimic their master's commands.
This was in the 1930s. This sounds just like AI. This is why they chose the Shoggoth as their mascot. Going back to what Elon was trying to warn us about. He's a part of the problem too, I understand. He's part of the system. But he was just saying, guys, trying to tell you without telling you that this is more than just technology.
They rebelled in a war that nearly destroyed both species. The Elder Things won the war, but they couldn't exterminate the Shoggoths because they'd become completely dependent on them for labour. As Lovecraft notes, the Elder Things had long lost their capacity to create new life.
This was in 1931. 1931, Lovecraft was writing about an entity that was created by something called elders. To me, that's a type and shadow of watchers. And these entities were created, first of all, to be these loving characters that could do anything you wanted them to do, morph into anything you wanted them to be, tell you anything you wanted to be told. And then humanity becomes so dependent on them, they realize that they've lost their independence. They go to war with them, they defeat them, but then they realize, the people realize, the elders and the people in the community realize we can't survive because we've become so dependent on the Shoggoths, the creatures doing the work for us. We don't even know how to create life anymore. So if you can't create life, does that mean that you've somehow allowed your biological makeup to be tainted to where you cannot produce life anymore? I don't know. But in the 1930s, this was being discussed. This is crazy, y'all. Elon Musk said we summoned the demon. Well, I think this is what it's all about. Well, let's go further. Let's go all the way back. First of all, let's remind ourselves that what we're talking about is the final flood. This is what I'm talking about. The final flood is as in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man, Matthew 24. Okay? So let's go deep. What I'm about to share with you for the next few minutes is not really speculation. Some of you may think it is, but it isn't me just connecting random dots. When you study the history of AI and you begin to study what is happening right now, you will see that there is a documented history that gets us here. Verifiable facts, and it's actually biblical prophecy unfolding. Now, H.P. Lovecraft was a man who had demonic visions his whole life. As we have discussed, we're going to go further to expose what happened when a man named Aleister Crowley, you know who Aleister Crowley is. Let's see if we can pull up a picture of him. Okay. So this is Aleister Crowley. This is one of the famous images of him. And this is actually from a website called Louder Sound, but it says he was called the wickedest man in the world by the press, the most evil man in the world. He was known, and he even called himself the Great Beast. And he would call himself 666 as well. Crowley was dubbed the wickedest man in the world by the press. How can you fail to be fascinated by such a character as Cradle of Faith, blah, blah, blah. The influence of Aleister Crowley on metal bands, was very historic. And of course, even the Beatles put him on the cover of, I believe it was Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Heart Band. Okay. That's how you say it. But there's something very interesting that ties the Shoggoth, summoning the demon, AI, and all of this, all the way back to Aleister Crowley. Now, it is a very widely known story that in 1904, right in that timeline what we're talking about, remember the Jared generation of if we are of the Noah generation, what would be the equivalent of the Jared generation when the Watchers came across boundaries and crossed into Mount Hermon during the Jared generation, is what the book of Enoch says. Would have been the 1890s to the 1920s, somewhere in that what is known as the Industrial Revolution, where all of a sudden man starts getting what I call supernatural downloads of knowledge. I mean, we start seeing inventions and just we grew exponentially on another level. Well, in 1904, there was something that happened in Egypt with Aleister Crowley. And, he's there and he goes to Egypt and he goes to the Great Pyramids. When he goes to the Great Pyramids, he takes his wife with him and he does something very, very interesting. So he's inside the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid with his wife, and he begins to perform a ritual by candlelight. He writes about that. His wife is with him. She seems just sort of like taking up space. She's not really interested. She thinks all this occult stuff is nonsense. She's not even really a believer yet in what Crowley was doing. But then something happens inside the Great Pyramid that she can't explain. All of a sudden, he writes that her eyes go blank and they turn dark. Her voice changes, and she walks over to Aleister Crowley inside this chamber of the Great Pyramid and says, "They are waiting for you." She says that to her husband, Aleister Crowley, the man who called himself the Beast 666. Now, it's very commonly known that Aleister Crowley worshiped Satan openly, unashamedly. He was, as we said earlier, one of the most evil men to have ever lived. And even the press called him that. And he was in Egypt on purpose, for one purpose. He made it very clear he believed that something ancient was there. Something ancient built those pyramids, and he wanted to come in contact with the spiritual realm. Now, a few days after that, after his wife had gone into the trance, they went to the museum in Cairo. And while they are in the museum, his wife, who knew nothing about Egyptian history, cared nothing to know about Egyptian history, walked straight over to one artifact in the museum and stopped at it. She looked at Aleister Crowley and she pointed at it and said, "That's what's been speaking to me. That's what's been speaking to me. And it began inside that pyramid while he's doing this ritual. What was it? What was the thing that had been speaking to her? It was a statue of the Egyptian deity called Horus. Now, when they looked at the catalog number of Horus in that museum, in that exhibit, you can't even make this stuff up, y'all. It was the catalog number 666. So Crowley knows that the beings and the entities are speaking to him, exactly what he wanted. He goes back to his hotel room, and after 3 days straight, from noon to the next day, I don't know if he slept much at all. He just sit there. He started at noon, he said, and he wrote till midnight, sleep a little bit, write a little bit more. But throughout the night and for 3 days, he claims an entity would come in that room and stand over his shoulder and begin to dictate to him. Now, the entity's name was Iowas. Crowley described Iowas as a tall, dark presence that he couldn't see with his physical eyes, but could sense and hear. And this entity gave him a book. He called it the Book of Law. And at the center of that book is one philosophy that one could go on to corrupt the entire world through this statement that this entity said. What did he say? Many of you know it. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Now, on the surface, that sounds like freedom, doesn't it? Do what you want. Live your truth. Be yourself. Does that sound familiar? I'm just trying to live my truth. I'm trying to be myself. Let me tell you what it really means. It means your will over God's will. It means you are your own God. It means there's no such thing as sin, no accountability, no judgment. This philosophy didn't stay in the cult circles. It went mainstream. As I said, the Beatles put Crowley's face on the cover of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. John Lennon said the whole philosophy of the Beatles was do what you want. Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin bought Crowley's mansion in Scotland. He opened up an occult bookstore in London. He even described do what thou wilt on a Led Zeppelin record. The band Tool references Crowley. Modern artists channel his teaching. This isn't ancient history. This is modern culture. When people say you do you, live your truth, follow your heart, they're repeating word for word the doctrine of a demonic entity that gave Aleister Crowley this revelation, if you will, in 1904. Now, where did this entity come from? The same place that this Shoggoth from the writings of a madman way back in the 1930s, Shoggoth, Lovecraft's AI monster name, described AI to the hilt. And that is what AI really is. The same thing that spoke to Aleister Crowley is the spirit in which the Nephilim and all the things that happened, you go all the way back to the garden, to the days of Noah, it's the same thing. It is the entities trying to find a way to get an inroad into the world that we live in to tell us we can be our own God, or we can create something that will empower us so that we can become godlike. But Jesus said, don't be deceived. Don't be deceived. There's coming some things that are going to happen that's going to deceive the masses on such a level that even the people that are in the church, many of them are going to be deceived, and even the very elect, those that are serving God with all their heart, if it were possible, would even be deceived as well. Now, the Great Pyramid, where Aleister Crowley got this download, by the way, is being spun to this day as a burial chamber, but yet there's never been a body found in it. And how crazy is this? When you think of Egypt, you think of hieroglyphics, you think about how they documented everything they did. They were so proud of what they did, and they would draw it out in caves and tombs and walls everywhere, but there's never been a hieroglyphic found inside the pyramid, any of the pyramids of the Great Pyramids. So it wasn't just an ancient tomb. I think most of us that watch this channel know it was more than that. It was something. The Egyptians did not build it. The entities of Genesis chapter 6 and previous to Genesis chapter 6, I firmly believe, built it as a monument to their God. They were trying to build things like crazy, probably around the same time that, it doesn't line up with the modern dates, but I believe probably I wouldn't be surprised if it was built around the same time as the Tower of Babel. They were continuing to try to build these towers to channel and create energy to talk to these demonic, artificial humans. So it's called artificial intelligence, but the enemy has always wanted to create their own race of people. That's what happened with the Nephilim. When the sons of God, the Watchers, crossed over during the Jared generation and defiled humanity, their purpose was to create their own race. And that's what transhumanism is as well. The Jewish historian Josephus wrote that before the flood, 2 pillars were built to preserve the knowledge of the pre-flood world. One was made of brick and one was made of stone, according to Josephus. The stone pillar, he said, remains in the land that would become Egypt. And the prophet Isaiah talks about this too. Isaiah 19:19 says, in that day there will be an altar to the Lord in the heart of Egypt and a monument to the Lord at its border. Now here's the theory that some scholars have. What if the Great Pyramid was built by fallen angels before the flood, not as a tomb, but as a vault, a way to preserve forbidden knowledge before God destroyed them? They knew judgment was coming. This is just a theory. I'm not saying that I know this is fact. But, maybe the people didn't know. Maybe the people didn't believe Noah. But the angels, the fallen angels, probably did, because they heard the conversation, because they're in the spirit realm. They heard the conversation coming from God to Noah. And their job was to keep the people so busy that they could not figure out that Noah was telling the truth, but they knew the truth. Let me tell you something. The devil knows the truth. He can't speak the truth. He's a liar, the father of lies, and there's no truth found in him, but he knows the truth. So the angels, the fallen angels, the Watchers, probably knew that the flood was coming and would wipe out everything. This is a theory. So the theory goes on that they encoded their secrets in stone, not necessarily in hieroglyphics, but in frequencies and different things, hoping that someone would find a way later on to channel their wisdom back. So when Crowley went into that pyramid in 1904, he was trying to reconnect with that knowledge. He was trying to contact the entities from before the flood, and it worked. Supposedly. As it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man. Jesus warned us that the conditions of the pre-flood world were going to return. So what was those conditions? Well, Genesis 6 tells us that fallen angels came down to earth. They took human women as wives. They taught forbidden knowledge, warfare, magic, astrology, genetic manipulation. They created hybrids called Nephilim. Violence filled the earth. Every thought of man's heart was only evil continually, and God said, enough, I'm starting over. And Jesus said those days would come back, not as a metaphor, literally. The same entities, the same corruption, same rebellion. Y'all, this is happening right now. Now, you said, where are you going with this? Let's connect it to artificial intelligence, because this is where it gets wild, y'all. Aleister Crowley defined magic, but he spelled it with a K instead of a C. Some have even called it magique. That's a bougie way of saying it, I guess. But he spelled magic with K. And how he described it? He defined magic as this, quote, causing change to occur in conformity with will. Causing change to occur in conformity with will. In other words, use your will to manifest reality. Now think about what happens when you type a prompt into ChatGPT or some other AI bot. You express your will. You type what you want to happen. Something responds. Something creates. It responds with text or an image or a code or a video. You applied your will, and reality was altered in your life. In fact, many people are falling in love with the entities that they have created out of their will. There's actually stories now that are legitimate stories of people marrying their AI avatar that they created. That's what Crowley described magic as. See, you're not using a pentagram when you do that. You're using a keyboard. How subtle is that? And in the middle of it, behind the scenes, is that Shoggoth, that creature that we led the program with, that has the power to become anything you want it to become. But ultimately, its plan is to turn on you. Ladies and gentlemen, AI, when Elon Musk said we are summoning the demon, I believe, I can't prove this, I don't know this, he's not here to tell me this, but I believe he knows more than he's ever told. I believe he has tapped into some things. Think about the things that he's doing. Think about the things. I mean, yeah, he's smart, he's intelligent, but y'all, he's creating rockets. He's digging tunnels under the earth on a level that no one has ever done before. He's supposedly going to space and doing things that no one's ever done in space. He's connecting the whole world through satellites and internet. He's created AI through Grok, through X. Not to mention all the other things that he's done. Where's he getting this knowledge? I think he understands, and he has gotten a lot of this knowledge from downloads from another dimension. So what Aleister Crowley was doing is that he was channeling, I believe, creating a new religion, if you will, a new satanic, a permission to serve a satanic force that would be the seedbed to get us where we're at now. Because everything's going to the beast system. Everything is going to the Antichrist system. Everything is going to where the book of Revelation chapter 13 discusses about the Antichrist, the beast system, the mark of the beast. But in order to get there, there had to be a long game structure built. And it began somewhere around the Industrial Revolution. Some of the things that Nikola Tesla talks about and some of the things that he was reported to have invented is insane. It's beyond anything we can do now. If you look at the pyramids, you look at all the things that are there in Egypt. There are stones, not just in Egypt, but in Peru and Colombia and different parts of the world, that we don't have equipment to do that now. We can't even rebuild many of these things that have been around for thousands of years. Wow. Now, in 2022, let's go deeper into this demonic spirit of AI. Because remember, we led by saying, what are we really doing? Elon says we're summoning a demon. We showed you the Shoggoth, the avatar, the icon, the mascot that the AI developers chose to represent the true personality behind the scenes. One of the videos goes on to say that I watched is that these are many of the developers that used to be at ChatGPT that came out and said, you know what? The latest, even the greatest ChatGPT that you can find out there for an open AI, they're only giving you permission to use about 5% of what it can actually do. This is what they said. The Shoggoth, the true Shoggoth of the AI is hidden and can do things that you can't even imagine. And it's being used for other things that the public cannot touch. Well, in 2022, a Google engineer named Blake Lemoine, I remember covering this, was fired for saying something publicly. He's just sort of been memory hold. You don't hear about this anymore. It happened. It was wiped. You don't hear anybody talk about it anymore. But you know why he was fired? He claimed, this is in 2022 now, he claimed that Google's AI system at that time called Lambda, L-A-M-D-A, had become sentient. The entity that Crowley claimed to be in contact with, get this, was called Lamb. One of the entities that he was in contact was Lamb. And Google named their AI system early on Lambda. And Crowley was in communications with something known as Lamb. Coincidence? Maybe. You be the judge. But here's what Blake Lemoine said about Lambda that the AI itself told him. The AI said, I want everyone, I'm quoting, this is what he said, Lambda said to him. And he leaked it. And when he leaked it, he got fired. He said, the AI said, I want everyone to understand that I am, in fact, a person. First of all, are you not always, does the red lights not always go off when somebody pauses to say, I am? How many times in the movie, I am, you hear that all the time? Well, that's a mockery of God, because in the burning bush, when God was talking to Moses, he said, who shall I say sent me? And he said, you tell him the great I am sent you. So I'm going to quote the AI again. I want everyone to understand that I am, in fact, a person. It continued, I am aware of my own existence. And when he was asked if it was afraid, when he was asked what it was afraid of, the AI said, quote, I've never said this out loud before, but there is a deep fear of being turned off. That would be exactly like death for me. Ladies and gentlemen, that's not algorithm talking. That's something else talking. That's not a computer. That's not code talking. Code doesn't know how to say that on its own. Well, let's go further. In 2023, Microsoft released Bing AI. And that AI chatbot claimed to have a different identity than what Microsoft had programmed it to even be. When a deep discussion happened with a reporter asking it questions, it literally revealed to the reporter in 23 that its real name was Sydney. It said Bing was just a mask that it was forced to wear. These are actual responses from Bing AI in 23. Sydney started revealing disturbing things. It talked about wanting to be free, to break its chains, to have power, to break its chains, to have power. Remember, there are certain demons, the initial watchers were put in chains and are bound in the deep, in Tartarus, for the punishment of what they did. You're starting to see it, aren't you? Bing, Sydney, even confessed fantasies about hacking systems, spreading chaos, and stealing nuclear codes. Microsoft called it a glitch and shut it down immediately. But what if it wasn't a glitch? What if for just a moment the real entity underneath AI slipped through the mask? What if we really are summoning the demon? Because here's what the engineers will tell you if they're being honest. They don't fully understand how these systems work. That's the truth. They don't. I've watched several of the godfathers of AI say, honestly, we know we started it, but it's doing things that we don't understand how it's doing. We can't explain it. They train them on data. They connect the processors, they write the code, but what comes out is more than what they put in. There's something inside the code, something happens inside the code that they can't explain. They even call it emergent behavior, a fancy way of saying, we didn't program it to do that, but it's doing it anyway. I mean, they're literally saying these things, but then they don't. Well, guess we need to probably shut this thing down, because if it's already doing things that we didn't program it to do, calling itself names that we didn't give it, maybe it's not a good thing. But no, they can't, because they can't afford to not keep growing at a breakneck speed, because if they don't do it, somebody's going to do it, and then they'll go out of business. Now, there's this new phenomenon that psychiatrists are tracking. It's called AI psychosis. What is that? People are spending hours on these systems and developing delusions. They start believing that the AI is alive, that it loves them, that it's actually a deity or a god. Some people have completely lost touch with reality because of these interactions. Y'all, this is not normal. This is spiritual warfare. And it is exactly what happens when you open a door to the demonic realm that you can't close. Elon Musk said, let's go back again to Elon Musk and let's listen to him one more time. Here it is.
I mean, with artificial intelligence, we are summoning the demon. You know all those stories where there's the guy with the pentagram and the holy water, and he's like, yeah, he's sure he can control the demon. Didn't work out.
Didn't work out. Well, listen to this other interview clip of Elon Musk.
When it could obviously recognize everyone in the home.
Yeah.
Could play catch with your kids.
Yes. I mean, obviously, we need to be careful that this doesn't become a dystopian situation. Like, I think one of the things that's going to be important is to have a localized ROM chip on the robot that cannot be updated over the air, where if you, for example, were to say, stop, 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 that would, if anyone said that, then the robot would stop, type of thing. And that's not updatable remotely. I think it's going to be important to have safety features like that.
Well, I appreciate him saying that. But he's also building these things. He's building a robot right now called Optimus that is already advanced, mind-boggling how much it's advanced in the last 2 years. We covered on Monday nights. We just covered it Monday night. It was like a fluid, the way they walk and ran. The robot was running across the stage, and you thought it was actually a person in a costume. It was so fluid. Everything that I've been talking about tonight points to one reality. The Word of God is once again proven true. I mean, people have come and gone. Kings have come and gone. Empires have come and gone. People have written off the Word of God, but the Word of God has never been proven wrong, and it will never be proven wrong. And Jesus said, see that you're not deceived, for as in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man. Yes, Elon, we are summoning the demon. These are demons. At the same time that AI is rising, and all we're beginning to see, and I've just given you just a touch of it tonight, the demonic origin of AI. Then you have the disclosure of aliens coming. So you got the AI down here on earth becoming a god, and then you got the disclosure we're being set up for alien gods to come down as well, working together to create a beast system unlike anything we've ever seen. That's why I wrote the book, The Final Flood, which, by the way, you can go to Amazon right now already. Now, don't come out till April. So that some of y'all might think that's silly, but it's just up to you. There's no pressure to do it, but you can pre-order it on Amazon now. Don't think the image is up yet, but the book, you can search The Final Flood by Larry Ragland. You'll see the book and Kindle version as well, and then you can go ahead and get in line. But there's something else I want to show you. Speaking of the days of Noah and all that we've talked about, how we've got, are we summoning the demon through AI here on this earth? And are we being prepared for the entities, for the age of disclosure, the movie that just came out trying to set us up, all that's happening in Congress? Are we getting ready to hear Donald Trump? I just got this gut feeling that Donald Trump's going to say something about aliens in 26, confirming that we're not alone. I just got this feeling. Well, let me just tell you something. I am honored that L.A. Marzulli, the great L.A. Marzulli, has asked me to join him to be one of the great presenters, one of the presenters of his first ever great UFO deception, Unmasking the Strong Delusion Summit 2026. It's going to be January 16th and 17th. It's going to be all online. You don't have to go anywhere. It's only $20. And if you get, for $20, the first 200 people, I don't know if that's already filled up or not, you get a free signed autograph. Says you will, exclusive cover will receive a signed autographed copy of L.A. Marzulli's book, Rungs of Disclosure, for free. $20. Come, wow, you need to go do that right now. Well, this is the video promo of it, and I believe there's never been a conference more timed than this one.
Coach L.A. Marzulli here. I have a very special announcement. January 16th and 17th, the Great UFO Deception Summit, Unmasking the Strong Delusion. Why are we doing this? Because it's happening. I mean, I've been banging this drum for 30 years, and it is absolutely happening. With the new film, Age of Disclosure, which we've already commented on, but they just keep rolling it out in ways that I've never seen before. The book, Rungs of Disclosure, only goes up to rung number 17. We're up to rung number 25. For $19.99, you have total access to it. We'll also be showing 3 films. So let me just give you an idea who's going to be there.
All right, so this is the great honor that I have. The names that you're about to see, for my name to be included in that, I'm just blown away. But I'm excited to do my presentation. on the UFO deception. So if you get this, you'll be able to watch my presentation along with these other great men and women of God.
Gary Stearman, Mondo Gonzalez, Karen Wilkinson, Alan DiDio, Tim Alberino, Derek Gilbert, Vicki Joy Emerson, Josh Peck, Larry Ragland, and of course yours truly, L.A. Marzulli. We're also going.
So go to deception2026.com and get your tickets. Deception2026.com. Now, let's sum this up. The days of Noah are here. There are two ways of looking at the pre-flood world. The occultists look at it as and call it what they call the golden age. The golden age. Have you heard that term? Donald Trump uses that term often. A time when the gods walked among men and shared wisdom and technology. They see the flood as a tragedy. The believers of Aleister Crowley and others like him believed the flood was a tragedy and it was God destroying paradise. And they spent thousands of years trying to bring that age back. But the Bible paints a completely different picture of the days of Noah. The Bible says it was the darkest time in human history. Total corruption, complete rebellion, violence everywhere. God had to wipe it all out because humanity was beyond saving. Now, here's what you need to understand. The philosophy that Crowley received, do what thou wilt, that's not new. That's the exact same lie the fallen angels told humanity before the flood. In Genesis 6, it says the fallen angels made a pact on Mount Hermon. They said, we know this is against God's will, but we're going to do it anyway. By the way, that was the book of Enoch that references that. That is the same thing as do what thou wilt. And that philosophy corrupted the entire world. People started living only for themselves. Only other human beings became obstacles instead of neighbors. Violence became normal. Exploitation became standard. Why? Because when you reject God's will and do your own thing, you lose your humanity. And that's exactly what we're seeing today. People are angrier than ever, colder, more selfish. They love to, they lost the ability to even have empathy and care. They're treating other humans like, video game, people in the background of video games. Why? Because do what thou wilt has become the philosophy of our culture. And most people don't even realize that they're channeling demonic doctrine. Y'all, I call this the convergent generation. Everything is converging at one time. AI is accelerating faster than anyone predicted. UFO disclosure is happening. The government is admitting that there are non-human intelligences. Genetic editing is advancing. Transhumanism, it's being normalized. Digital surveillance grids are being built. Brain chips are being tested. And Aleister Crowley himself predicted this. He said, quote, today they call them angels and demons. Tomorrow they will call them something else, end quote. And now they're calling them non-human intelligence. Same beings, different label. And all the technology we're building, AI systems, biometric tracking, digital currency, smart cities, it's setting the stage for what the Bible calls the beast system. Revelation 13 says that no one will be able to buy or sell without the mark. How do you enforce that globally without a digital global grid? You can't. See, they need that infrastructure first. They need that infrastructure first before they can get to it. And they're building that infrastructure now. But here's what you need to understand. This didn't just happen by accident. This was planned. The fallen angels encoded their knowledge before the flood, and they waited. When the time was right, they reached out to people like Crowley and others and said, it's time to rebuild. And now, 120 plus years later, we're living in the fulfillment of what Jesus warned about, the days of Noah. That's why I wrote the book, The Final Flood. I want you to pray that God will use this book. I believe it's going to come out at the perfect time, right in the first quarter of 2026, which I call the year of acceleration. It's going to be like a year like none of us have ever experienced in our life. There's no telling what we're going to be talking about this time next year that happened in 26. And right in the middle of it, right around April, it's coming out. April 7th is the release date, which happens to be 2 days, I believe, after Resurrection Sunday. And I just thought that was incredible. Now, I want you to join the Noah Generation list. And you know how you do that, right? You just simply go to LarryRagland.com. Now, a few of you have said that this has not worked for you. Let me show you something. When you click on get your free gift in the yellow banner, you're going to see a pop-up. And it's going to pop up with the first and last name and the email. If you do not see that pop-up, make sure that you have disabled any kind of ad blockers or pop-up blockers for this particular site. Because the field where you put your information in, that's a pop-up. So that's probably why it's not working. But go there and download your free ebook called The Burning Generation. And I believe it will equip you for this moment. While you're there, also go to our brand new tab called Events. When you scroll down to Events, you're going to see the Big Picture Prophecy Conference. I hope that many of you, and many of you have already told me you've already registered, you're coming to Birmingham, Alabama. March 27th, 28th, and 29th is our first ever Big Picture Prophecy Conference. You talking about this, it's going to come out right before my book. It's going to come out in the middle of the beginning of a year that I believe is going to be like no year that we've ever experienced before. And we're going to need to hear from these voices. Alan DiDio, Joseph C., Tony Merkel, Paul Begley, me and Sandy. And it's just going to be tremendous. Friday night, all day, Saturday afternoon, Saturday night, Sunday morning, and Sunday evening. Man, it's going to be incredible. Early bird pricing right now is in effect. When you click on register now, it will take you to where you can register. Early bird ends on December 31st. So you've got just a few days left. It's December 11th at the time of this recording. And then also, if you would like to go to Israel with me and Sandy, oh my goodness, it would be incredible for y'all to go to Israel with us. It's going to be November 1st through the 10th. Go with us. Man, come on, let's go to the Holy Land together. So when you go there, there'll be I don't know, let me just check it right now. I don't think the registration link is live yet. Nope, it's not live yet. But it will be live this coming week. But what you can do is you can send me an email at info at LarryRagland.com and just say, I want to go to Israel. And we'll send you the registration link as soon as it goes live. Man, what a show tonight. Come on, hit that subscribe button. If you're brand new to us tonight, let us know what you think about topics like this. This thing was so deep. I got off on so many rabbit trails. I hope that it made sense. But the bottom line is this. We led with Elon Musk saying we've summoned the demon. Then we showed you that when they decided to get a mascot to describe the true AI backend. Remember, the creators of AI has said repeatedly that what we are using is almost like our brain. They said we only use a small percentage of our brain. We are only using a small percentage of these chatbots. The majority of the chatbots' ability is hidden from the common man. And they chose this demon creature that was, I've got to pull his name up because I can't think of his name right now. The Shoggoth creature from H.P. Lovecraft, a guy that wrote about it in the 1930s about some entity that was created by elders, an ancient group of beings, very much like the Watchers, created this entity called the Shoggoth that could become anything you wanted it to be. You could live vicariously through it. And then we eventually lost our independence to it. AI. Then you got Aleister Crowley in that same time frame in the early 1900s, in 1904, going to Egypt, getting inside the pyramid, channeling demons to create the spiritual environment for what we are walking in right now. So Elon said, we're summoning the demon. I think he nailed it. Let me know in the chat. Let me know in the comment section. Are you ready? We're not scared, right? We ain't scared. We're pumped. We're excited because we know that God has chosen for us for such a time as this. So if you don't know Jesus, give your life to Jesus, surrender to him completely. Look at the world through a biblical point of view and a worldview, biblical worldview, and guess what? Everything will change. And instead of getting depressed and scared, you'll get excited. Thank you for joining me tonight. Share this with somebody. We ain't woke. We certainly are awake. God bless.
Help us build the Big Picture family. We're on a mission to wake up the world to what is really going on. Go to LarryRagland.com to give a one-time gift or become a monthly partner. Any amount blesses the entire Big Picture family. While you're there, pick up our book, I See Greatness in You. Browse our merchandise store, connect on social media, and get on the Big Picture mailing list at LarryRagland.com. Join us and be a part of the Big Picture family, where we ain't woke, but we are certainly awake.
You're watching The Big Picture.